We developed the BioPharmaX strategy and framework after being frustrated by how long it takes to go from research finding to clinical implementation. The life sciences and healthcare has a particularly deep and wide valley of death. It takes an average of 17 years for proof of concept research finding to become adopted clinically. In 2018, the editors of the New England Journal of Medicine shed some light on why the translational gap is as it is. They point out that a silo mentality has hindered scientific and clinical therapy development. They then point out recent advances, though, require larger collaborations. And what they mean is that throughout the whole process, there is a need for more collaboration. You need multiple disciplines to make sense of the complex science that underpins today's complex therapies. And to bridge the gap beyond scientific validation, you also have to achieve the acceptance of multiple different types of stakeholders. There are lots of examples of new therapies and diagnostics that have to achieve a high degree of scientific validation, but never get implemented in clinic. Even once an innovation is adopted, there's a growing need to continue to do research to monitor the real-world effectiveness and safety, especially for complex therapies. Think, for example, gene therapy or cell therapy. That's because they tend to have a potential to have unpredictable systemic effects, which means you need to have even more disciplines engaged. Given all this complexity and all the people you need to involve, you would think the simple solution would be just to bring everyone together, but that approach until recently has been largely avoided. Hence the admonishment by the editors of the New England Journal of Medicine. And that is because most people fear the complex collaborations that this entails and worry that they will be more of a burden than a benefit. At BioPharmaX Consulting, though, the opposite is true. For the past 15 years, we have been entirely focused on complex collaboration and complex collaborative ventures across the entire life sciences and healthcare spectrum. What we have learned is that while complex collaborations are challenging, there's also a great deal of underutilized potential that can be realized with the right strategy and framework. My first effort to express this was in the book Assembled Chaos. BioPharmaX represents further refinement and extension of the principles I wrote about in the book, and there are two main components to the strategy and framework. The first is about going from proof of concept to validated product. Typically, this is done with equity financing, almost as a lottery. A dozen or so companies are funded to take single candidates or a cluster of candidates forward, and if you're lucky, 2 of them are a success. For one company, there's a high risk of catastrophic failure. What we really need is a way for these companies to work together, to leverage synergies, and to make use of common resources, the goal being to reduce the risk of catastrophic failure. There's a way to do this, and it's called a distributed company, or a DISCO, where a group of companies work together under an umbrella addressing a domain, for example, such as anti-aging therapies. This way you do not have everyone in a single company invested in a single idea or maybe a small cluster of ideas because that's all they have. You leverage the collaboration. The second component is about coordinating a broader community effort. There are many other stakeholders that can contribute both directly to a specific development program or more broadly in solving innovation bottlenecks. Resolving innovation bottlenecks such as unnecessary regulatory hurdles is where exponential gains can be made. Furthermore, it is the broader community where new candidate therapies or technologies arise, and there are stakeholders, large industry, that actually can, or the engine that can support the latter half of the innovation chain. So BioPharmaX is about bringing these two components together. Distributed companies become part of a broader distributed translational ecosystem. The core of the translational ecosystem is made up of assets such as data sets, protocols, knowledge. These are the kind of things that can help to solve innovation bottlenecks. So the engine of the ecosystem is made up of what we call accelerant projects, which are lightweight projects that can serve as a way to test a concept, initiate a bigger piece of work, or pull together a common resource. They also help to build awareness across the entire community and within the distributed company. Most importantly, they build up trust between partners, which is key to know which companies should be part of that disco, which ones you should invest in. You only really know and understand another organization once you work together to solve a problem. The end goal is to lower the cost of failure, to achieve more success. Working and achieve it faster. Working in your own silo, you have to narrow down ideas and select ideas and invest in one. Once you do this, it's very hard to go back because you've got sunk cost. When you work in a distributed company supported by a translational ecosystem, the cost of taking one project forward or one idea is less because you're working with others who are also contributing. That means you can test multiple ideas with the same amount of resource that equates to a greater chance of success. At BioPharmaX Consulting, we are using the BioPharmaX framework and strategy for developing strategic plans for disease foundations, academia, and industry, designing consortium projects and stakeholder communities, guiding the transformation of existing projects and communities into a transitional ecosystem, and perhaps most importantly, building equity finance ecosystem distributed companies that encompass the entire framework and strategy. If you believe, as we do, that we all have to do something about the translational gap, get in touch and let's figure out what we can do together to make a real difference for individuals who are suffering from disease.